Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week. Also, I do have a Kickstarter going on right now. If you like superhero stories, go check out Like Father, Like Daughter. It's about a high school girl. Her father left her to become a full-time superhero. Everyone in the world loves him except for her, and then she inherits his abilities. Plot twist, we get to see that Invulnerable is dead, her dad, and she has to take over his mantle, all while dealing with learning that her mother is a villain. So kind of this torn between am I a bad guy, am I a good guy story as we get to see her explore being a superhero. So go check that one out. Also, I'm under the weather. I went to New York Comic Con last week, did all the tabling stuff. We actually had 2 tables there, which was a lot of fun to sell the comics, and it was really exciting and tiring, which is why I didn't have a video last week and why I don't have a voice. But it was a really great time, and excited also to talk about some comics this week. So I have 18 books on top of the laryngitis. So number 18 for me is Iron Man issue 1. I have not loved an Iron Man run in a while. I think the last one I really liked was the Tom Taylor run, which was honestly a while ago with Superior Iron Man. And before that was Matt Fraction's run. Look, I enjoy a good social commentary, but it just kind of bored me, honestly, and I just felt like the artwork wasn't as strong here, and there just wasn't a hook. So it wasn't a bad issue, just wasn't really for me. So giving that 2 stars, and that is number 18. Moving on to number 17, which is X-Men issue 6. This is a book that I've been on the fence with, honestly. I like a lot of the X books. We'll talk more about other X books I enjoy with this list, but for some reason this flagship just isn't as strong for me as something like Uncanny X-Men, which does feel more like the flagship book. There's interesting things that happen here. Like, I like this New Mutant girl that shows up, but there's just so many characters. The artwork is just not as strong as something like Uncanny X-Men or even Dazzler and XFactor that came out this week, which I want to try to finish up to the point of that crossover. There's a crossover event with Uncanny X-Men and X-Men and a few of the other titles. So I want to keep this book up until then and see how I feel about it. But so far, it's the weaker one for me. So giving that one 2.5 stars, and that is number 17. Moving on to number 16, which is The Incredible Hulk issue 18. This is a book that I feel like kind of has lost its way. I really like the characters. I like the hauntingness of it all, but the plot just it needs to reel back a little bit. Going into this Las Vegas story, Charlie and Hulk being separated, it's just not as entertaining to me as seeing them together as they talk more about the green and some of the other aspects in Immortal Hulk. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 16. Moving on to number 15, which is Action Comics issue 1072. This is a weekly event going on right now, and as someone who's not a big Mon-El fan, I don't think this is a bad story. I think the artwork is really good. I think it's cool that we have the Supergirl story as a backup, but I'm not particularly invested in it, especially to spend $5 a week on this series, where I do think there is stronger Superman titles. So I think for the time being, this arc, I am going to step away from it, but then when the next arc and next creative team comes on, it'll be easy to jump back in, which is the format I have been enjoying with Action Comics. So giving that one 2.5 stars, again, that's more personal preference than anything. Moving on to number 14, which is Green Lantern Dark issue 1. I didn't know how many issues this is going to be because I read it and I was like, is that it? It kind of feels like a one and done. And you get to see this horror aspect Green Lantern. Very something is killing the children. I heard the description and the comparison. I definitely see that. The artwork is, I think, fits what the style it's going for. I enjoy the relationship between this Green Lantern and this girl. I thought the connection between depression and this Green Lantern was interesting, but there's not a hook. Again, by the end, you're like, oh, that's it. And I'm fine with that. There's not another reason to pick up more issues and to really gravitate you into this story. So giving that one 2.5 stars. Actually, I think I gave that 3 stars, and that is number 14. Moving on to number 13, a book I got on whim, and that is Spider-Boy issue 12. The reason I got it's the introduction to the Spider-Girl character. I know even Mayday has made some appearances here, and I'm a huge Mayday fan. There's not a lot of Spider-Girl here, and I'll continue to say what I've been saying about Spider-Boy when I picked up that first issue. this is not a bad book. It is not written for me. It is definitely more aimed to younger readers. I don't know if younger readers are picking this up, but maybe, a mother or father are reading this to their kids, or uncle, aunt, an older person is reading this to a kid, and that's kind of the experience of this book. But as an adult not reading this to a kid, it's not really doing it for me, but I also don't think it's a horrible book. I think it's cool that they're introducing these characters like Spider-Girl and him teaming up with Daredevil, and them having this Spider-Boy day. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 13. Moving on to number 12, which is the Powerpuff Girls Halloween special. We just had another Powerpuff Girls last week. I have a fun time with these books. It's one of the all ages books I enjoy. This is a little darker, especially with the artwork. It's fun, actually. Kat Staggs and Amanda, who are both married, so that's kind of cool to see a married couple working on this book. But I do think that the artwork is, again, a little bit darker than you would expect for a Powerpuff Girls series, but it fits the tone of the book. It's a shining version of Powerpuff Girls. That's what it is. There's a lot of shining references. Buttercup is doing this like comic contest. It's a fun, I think, palate cleanser for a very, very big week with how many books there are. So giving that one 3 stars, and that is number 12. Moving on to number 11, which is Green Arrow issue 17, the end of Joshua Williamson's run as we get into a new era. I liked Williamson's stuff a little bit more than the actual new era. The new era just kind of feels like things we've seen with Green Arrow, especially more towards that Jeff Lemire side of Green Arrow. But I like the Green Arrow family. I do think there's some quick revelations here, especially with the culmination of Absolute Power and Amanda Waller. But I like the character moments. I thought it was a pretty solid bow to what Joshua Williamson was doing. I know it was kind of an abrupt ending because he wasn't expecting to leave the title, but also he had a lot of titles on his plate. I thought the artwork was really strong for that Joshua Williamson side. I'm curious to see where Green Arrow is going, but I wasn't very impressed for me and what I like about Green Arrow with that preview. So I'm going to give that 3.5 stars, and that is number 12. Moving on, that was number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Nightwing issue 119. A little bit of a darker palette towards what we're used to with the Tom Taylor series, which was honestly really bright. It kind of feels like a very different version of Bloodhaven, but I liked it. I thought there were some interesting cookie crumbs from that last run that stays here. We get to see Nightwing's sister. We get to obviously see Oracle. And I like this interesting commentary about the police getting these technological advances here and how that's affecting Nightwing as a hero and vigilante, especially it being connected to the mayor, which is his sister. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here that hooks me to get to that next issue, even if I thought the artwork didn't quite fit the story as much as the Tom Taylor run. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is XFactor issue 3. I like this series a lot. I don't really know where it's going. I do think it's a lot of the same thing. It's a lot of the same commentary, but I really like Havoc as a main character. I like that commentary. I enjoyed the jokes that are played here, and I like meeting these new characters even if they're not going to last, like the immortal grandma. I think she's a fun character, and I like the interpersonal relationships between Polaris and Havoc. I do want to see even more of that because I think that's the strength of this series more than the plot of them being these celebrities, but I like it. I think it's a really solid series and a really fun read for the X-Men lineup, and really, really great artwork by Bob Quinn. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to a book that actually is much higher than the first issue, and that is The Moon is Following Us, issue 2. I actually think this should have been the first issue. I understand the creativity of why that first issue is all in the dreams and in our characters' heads, but this kind of got me into the emotional side of stuff, which I like from Daniel Warren Johnson's story. And I like this issue more because of it, where we get to understand the parents and why they're doing what they're doing. There's a little mystery that's built here. I still like the artwork a lot more because Johnson is doing the art for the present. I like the groundedness more than the in the head dreams, but I think this gives you at least a little bit more context for the dreams. So I'm giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is Grommets issue 5. Another week this probably would have been in my top 5, but there's a lot of books and a lot of good books. This is more of a point A and point B, which is weird to say about a slice of life book, but it really is this kind of drama building of what is friendship and, what are these characters going to do with their friendships here, especially between the long-haired guy and our main character, where the main character is getting beaten up by this jock, and that long-haired guy has to make a decision about his friend and what they're going to do. And I think it builds builds the drama between classmates pretty well with this issue, and obviously some great artwork, and it's just a really fun slice of life book. So giving that one 4 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, the topic of the video. Absolute Wonder Woman issue 1. So is it better than Absolute Batman? So if you've been following my videos, Absolute Batman was my pick of the week when it came out, or I think it was close to my pick of the week. I think it was number 2. I really, really liked it. Thought it was such a great twist on Batman. To put in context, I think this is a really interesting twist on Wonder Woman. I like the whole hell aspect. I like that they're not just villains. I think having this darker side to the characters and her being raised in hell and learning about her relationship with her mom and what type of warrior she is and putting blood on her face, I think is really interesting. But I do think the artwork is a little stronger in Absolute Batman. I do think because the Batman flagship has not been impressing me, Absolute Batman feels like a bigger title. And obviously it started this universe. So like obviously it's that shock factor. It's the second book in that lineup. So you're already comparing and contrasting. Obviously even with this video you're comparing and contrasting. But also I've been really liking the Wonder Woman main series. I think it's been doing a really wonderful job with Wonder Woman. So you already have a really wonderful flagship. It's harder to get into this book and say this is perfect when you already have a series in the main lineup that you're enjoying. But I do think this is a really interesting series, and I want to follow it, and I want to see where it goes. And that's, again, more of an overall scope of things, of like why I enjoyed Absolute Batman more, because I needed that fill in my pull list. But that doesn't take anything away from this book. I really enjoyed this as a premiere. I as someone who's not as big of a Wonder Woman fan, I'm also interested to see, you know, what references they're going to make and how issue 2 and 3 is going to take, because this really was more of an origin story. Like what is going to be kind of beat by beat of this series, because I don't know if they really introduced that in this issue. So giving that 4 stars. I thought it was a really fun issue. I really liked it, but if I have to pick, I did like Absolute Batman a bit more. All right, going into number 5, which is Zatanna Bring Down the House, for issue 5. I thought this was a pretty solid ending, and honestly, I'm sad because it's over, but also because I wanted more. I really liked the epilogue for this. Like, I enjoyed learning why Zatanna couldn't use magic and her connection to magic now and her father, even though I don't know if it was as strong because she was a kid in there. But I really liked the end. I liked the end result of her joining the Justice League potentially, and her having the word magic and understanding what that means to her now. I like the artwork a lot. I wish this was an ongoing series, because I think this is a cool building block to something more than it feeling like this big finale to a miniseries. So giving that one 4 stars. Love this series. If you want to get into Zatanna, I do recommend this one. Moving on to number 4, which is the Tin Can Society, issue 2. This is a point A to point B, I would say. You know, it really gets you into the heads of these characters and their relationship between 2 characters in particular. I thought that's a really great way to kind of get us into this ensemble. We already know a lot about our main character and her relationship with the character who died. So to introduce the other characters slowly and get to learn more about them, I think is a really smart way to get into this mystery. Artwork is really good for this book, and I've been blown away by it. I'm really enjoying it and curious to see where it's going to go next. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, Detective Comics issue 1090. I really like this, and obviously I'm not surprised. It's Tom Taylor, it's Mikhail Janin, who I think, Mikhail Janin always has done great Batman stuff, and Tom Taylor, I love his writing. What I like is it feels a little outside his comfort zone, though. I feel like I haven't seen this side of Tom Taylor, and that's kind of fun to read. You know, it's as character-driven as you expect, but it's this kind of darker, more mysterious series where I feel like Tom Taylor tends to do more of that character-driven work, especially with Nightwing, which was more of a slice-of-life book than a plot-driven book. And here it's like, we'll get the character work, but it's also very plot-driven, theme-driven, as we get to see the past of Thomas and Martha Wayne. Cool, because you don't really get to see those characters outside their death very often. So to see them as characters and see this kind of poetic Joe Chill connection between their kindness is really interesting, and I'm sure it'll tie into the present and the serial killer as well. So I liked it. I thought it was a really, really great start, and I'm going to give that one 4 stars. I think my only hesitation to the series is just, you know, the connection between the person who gave birth. Is that going to be Joe Chill? I don't know if that connection was given in this issue, or maybe I missed it, but I'm curious about that, and I kind of wanted that connection to be stronger if that was the same character. All right, moving on to number 2. which is Dazzler issue 2. Honestly, has to do with my bias of Dazzler, but then also sometimes you just want a fun book, and I really think this book does that. It's a fun series that still has a commentary about mutants and humans that I think this era of X-Men has been doing a great job with. It's her just trying to deal with being a mutant and a pop star, and kind of being this like Taylor Swift type pop star. You get to see kind of a commentary about interviews and press versus celebrity, and I thought that was interesting. All while you're building this mystery of someone giving this mind control of Dazzler and her band. So I liked it. As a Dazzler fan, it's just kind of everything I want from a Dazzler book. So giving that one 4 stars, and that is number 2 for me. Moving on to number 1, I will say this is a perfect book and a perfect jumping on point, and that's Superman issue 19. Wow, this is such a great book to anyone who has loved Superman and anyone who wants to get into Superman, which is exactly what these all-in books should be. We get to see this mystery of Lois, still being a journalist and still being the editor-in-chief, by also still being Superwoman, and we don't know how this power has come to be, but there's some breadcrumbs that tells you, maybe it wasn't so squeaky clean of how this happened, and maybe it's connected to Doomsday, because he shows up in a really unique way, because we usually see Doomsday a lot and he's just kind of punching things, and this one you get a little bit more of an emotional story. We get to see time stop of like this big event is going to happen. Can Superman prevent it, and does he have to team up with Doomsday? And this run has done a great job at that, of humanizing villains, these huge villains like Lex Luthor and now Doomsday, with some wonderful art with Dan Mora. I love like the classicness of Jimmy trying to get the picture, Lois and Superman being in the supply closet as they rush to be heroes. It's honestly just kind of a perfect Superman book for me, and it gets me excited to want to read more. So overall, giving that one 5 stars. That is my pick of the week. In the comments below, let me know your pick of the week to get a chance to be featured on next week's episode. Hopefully, guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.